channel. My name's Adrian and this is my weekly channel update. This is my opportunity for me to talk about the games that I've played during the week, books that have been sent or arrived, but more importantly have a conversation topic. So today is the 23rd of November and it just happens to be my 51st birthday, which means I haven't got that long left on this planet. And this is not a doom and gloom weekly channel update, but it kind of got me thinking that my father died before 75, my grandfather died in his 60s, my other grandfather died very late 50s. So I might not have a huge amount of time left on this planet. So I want to spend what's left playing the games I want to play. My weekly update, conversation point, is going to be the reasons why I will never play 5th edition again. And I've got 10 of them. And I'm also going to follow it up next week's video with, more importantly, the games. So it's really going to be my top 10 fantasy games. So these are the games that I will always pick and choose. So let's get into the conversation topic because it's my birthday and we're going out. So my mom's arrived as well. So I need to sort of crack on. So there'll be a little break in the video because I had to go and answer the door. But yeah, I got kind of thinking that, say, it's not really trying not to be much of a negative, but when I looked at, my father had died just before 75, so I'm 51 today. So let's take the fact that I'm going to live to 75. Let's not be, let's just hope. And I'm still of sound mind. So that gives me 24 years. On average, I'm running 3 sessions or playing in 3 sessions a week. And you're going to play about 48 weeks of the year. So that gives me just under 3,500 gaming sessions until I'm done, which I think you'll agree isn't a lot, given I've got a lot of books behind me that I've still never read, let alone played. What needs to happen is the systems that I don't overly enjoy or I've played too much of need to go in favour. Hence the reason why I will never play 5th edition ever again. I may do one-shots, but I definitely will not join a 5th edition or run a 5th edition campaign. Okay, so let me just then run through the 10 reasons. And then this is not me bashing 5th edition. It kind of is, but it's not me sort of, play the game that you like. So let me just then run down the top 10 reasons why I'll never play 5th edition again. Now, 1, bloated system. There are just too many subclasses, spells, optional tools. When I do, this sounds a little bit hypocritical, and I appreciate that because I do talk about you can never have too much choice. I think the problem with 5th edition now is there's just beyond too much choice now, because you've now got 2 editions. Both of it is pretty much, you can use the 2014 stuff or the 2024 stuff. It's very much compatible still. So you've got 10 odd years worth of literature, lore, classes, options, subclasses, and there's just so much bloat and I think now baggage with it. And I know a lot of people are going to love this, and that they might say my first reason is kind of strange, but it's just something that I don't die. Second one, endless combat. So I recently played in the one shot, which is what's made me just go, do you know what? I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the adventure, but in 3 hours, we had 2 combats, and there was only, I think there was 5 of us in the party. The second combat was fighting 1 creature, and the first combat there was about 6, maybe 7 creatures, and that took 2 hours. There are games out there that you could have 4 or 5 combats in that period of time, and it's not the fact that the combats drag on that specifically annoy me. It's also the amount of downtime that, as a player, you just sat doing nothing, and you can see people going on their phones, checking the internet, because you can have 10 minutes before you go. Because realistically, what should happen is in the combat, you should engage in what's going on in the combat. You should be listening, paying attention, planning what you want to do. 5th edition, especially if you're a mage class, which is pretty much everyone now, that you don't know what you're going to do because lots of things can change by the time it gets round to you. But also, as I said, you get bored and you just drift off and you just don't really pay attention to what's going on. And that is, I find it really hard. As a game, you don't notice it as a games master, because I ran 5th edition for years. And as a games master, you do find that it drags but you're watching people visibly turn off and switch off during the combat, and combat shouldn't be like that. Everyone should be engaged, everyone should be helping. There's lots of stuff that should go on, and it means by the time you get to your turn, it should be a relatively snappy condition. There's lots of forums out there and stuff and conversations about, do we put timers on players' goes for 5th edition? Because a combat is meant to be, if you're in the middle of a combat, it's snappy. You don't really get to sit there and go, no, should I punch him in the head? Should I try and heal the person over there? It's meant to just be, lands on your turn and goes. And most other games will just move that because you've got limited choice. I'd say, again, this is that whole bloat. You've got, especially if you're above 10th level, you're just going to have too many options, too many abilities. And you're always thinking optimal, and that isn't always the most fun that you can have around the table. Which then leads me on to point 3, which is build obsession. And I'm going to choose my words carefully, because whenever I've played it, whenever I've ran it, everyone basically always plans out the whole of their character up to 20. They just do. Or, and this is the worst thing, they'll go onto Reddit or they'll go onto a YouTube channel and they'll watch someone talk about optimal builds, and they're just being told how to play their character, how to build it to do the most damage, to kill the most creatures in one go, how to be the best flyer, to come in and out of combat, which feats you need to start taking. And it's just the whole fun of role-playing for me, and especially when I'm games mastering, is watching people advance and then them discovering new powers, new abilities that they're going to get. And you don't kind of do that. You get it in 5th edition, but you already know because you've planned all the way out. And the reality is you never get all the way out, because very few campaigns go out to the, for the time and to the level that you want to play. You also level too fast, I think, which is, and especially going into point 4, the power creep in there. Most people will agree, especially games masters, that beyond about 12th level, the game is unplayable, because players become superheroes. They can do a huge amount of things on a turn, which then just, if there's no threat, there's no reward. And if there's no reward, you might as well not play. And I'm sure it suits an awful lot of people style, because I think 5th edition probably equates to probably a good 90% of all the games and the systems that's played in the whole of our community. But I want to discover things for myself. I used to have this in the CCGs, back in the day when I played Magic the Gathering. You want to open a deck and discover and play with your friends, and then go, that didn't work. So you then buy a few more packs and you put that in, that doesn't work. Now you can go and watch any video, any Reddit post, and they'll tell you exactly the optimal deck to play to beat a certain deck. We've got exactly the same with 5th edition. And I think it's sad. I think you gain more joy from discovery and potentially failing than succeeding, than someone else done that discovery for you and then you just pick whatever they're going to get. 5. This one I've seen too often. I don't overly get it in my group that often, because it's arguing over rules, the rules arguments, which can be quite nasty. We just tend to, if we're not sure, we'll just, one player may actually just go into the rules, but more often than not, we will just homebrew for that specific decision. We'll then get into the books. And I mean books, because there are a lot of books to go and find specific rules and changes to rules and things like that with 5th edition. And, you do have that, the player feat or whatever as well also breaks a lot of the rules to change the rules. And then if you get 2 feats together, can cause a lot of overpowering that makes the game, it just slows it down. Because especially when a player has built something based on someone else's build and the games master goes, I don't want to run it that way. I don't like it. I think we see there's the nasty build is that Sentinel, and the one you can hit them and they just stand still, and it's 2 feats and you're just breaking nearly every combat. And you can get that by, what's that, if you're a fighter, relatively quick. It's been a while on there, but yeah, it's just, I don't like it. There's too many rules. And again, this may be a me thing, because as I've got older, I just kind of... Same reason I'll never play Pathfinder, the Reforged edition. Way too many rules. 3.5 was my favourite version of D&D, and we played it a lot, but we came into it, and as the books came out, you played more. Now, the learning curve to get into a game shouldn't be that high. You shouldn't have to not really know the rules for several weeks into a campaign, and then have that conflict with the player because they interpret a rule one way and you interpret the rule the other way. They should be nice and clear. And also, buying out of a book, I think homebrewing is something that a lot of people do in 5th edition because the rules need homebrewing. So that's that is my number 5 there. Number 6, prep overload. To run a game effectively on 5th edition, now there are some really good games masters that can just go and they don't do any prep. That isn't me. I need to do a lot of prep because I need to know what's going on. I also need to have an idea of what's going on. I was never did grid-based combat ever until I got to 5th edition. I didn't even know what grid-based combat was because we always, pen and paper, that someone around the table would be drawing the maps and stuff, and you'd have those little niggles where I thought I was there, and you go, no, you're 10 foot away, and you're right next. There's a chair in between you, or whatever it may be, and then the players go, okay, that's what it is. Sorry, I wasn't really paying attention. But nowadays they want it all gridded, and you want to see things, and you need to make the grids exciting because if you don't, combat becomes quite static. But in reality, most people will just move to the opponent and then hit, or hide round and cast a spell. So the grid doesn't really make a difference other than it stops the arguing because people don't know where they are. But you also need, especially for boss fights, you've got to do a huge amount of prep because the creatures, so you're going to have your minions and then you're going to have your boss fight. Because in all fairness, if you ever run a boss fight, one person against a bunch of players, it's going to be very, very boring for the players because, like I say, they're going to be standing there hitting. So you've got to learn the minions, and they got to do things that will be a bit interesting. But you've then got to learn the boss, all of his powers, his features, abilities, and stuff. But not only that, you've got to make sure you take away, his legendary actions, his reactions, he may even have layer actions as well on top of that. You're like, it's just too much, way too much for my fragile little mind. Number 7 is exploration is very, very boring in 5th edition. Let's go into that cave. Okay, what should we take? Do we want some torches, ropes, anything along those? Don't need it. I can see in the dark. What do you mean we can see in the dark? We can all see in the dark. What? Why? Oh no, apart from the human. Great. Every other game, most people can't see in the dark. So you've got torchlights. The bad guys that are dark adept can see them coming. They're aware of them coming. When you have dark vision and you can sneak, and then you can do a group sneak and then go and do it on advantage, it's very rare, unless you've got the clunk in his full armor, that going into a cave or sneaking into a place is really bad. Lo and behold, you then give a druid or something that can fly, that can just go around the whole of the map, because unless you're switched on enough as a games master to put doors and have shut doors, then they're just going to fly around and have a look. And there's spells that can go in where you can just go and see the whole of the base in there. There's a globe that I think it lasts for about an hour that you can just go around. It just ruins all the immersion, all the excitement, all that. What's actually in there? They know what's in there. They know what's going on beforehand. And if you just put doors in all the time, especially in a cave, oh, there's a door in a cave. Why? Well, because I want to stop you. But you also, you kind of, most games, and I'm guilty of this, I very rarely worry about encumbrance because the players just go, I don't want to keep track of encumbrance. The games master doesn't keep track of encumbrance. So they're just walking around with like thousands of swords and stuff. They've got 100,000 things in bags of holding. There's that quiver that you can put spears, arrows, bolts in. So then they can just put that out and they can just pull out anything they want. It's designed it's easy mode. Everything's just too easy. And exploration is it's the scary part, it's the dungeon. It's the first D in Dungeons and Dragons, and there's no real fear in the dungeons, which then brings me on to 8. And the other reason there's no fear, safety nets. And I'm not talking about safety tools in the game. I'm on about the fact that, death saving throws, and the fact that nearly everyone else can cast healing spells. I was really, as I did my review of Castles and Crusades last week, and the Bard class is in there, and I was just reading it going, I'd forgotten what it's like to see a Bard that isn't probably one of the best healers in the game. They don't cast magic. They're a combat class, which is what they were always designed to be. Look at Dark Sun. They're assassins in Dark Suns. Now, in 5th edition, they're healers. They're better in most healing situations than a cleric, which, again, the cleric, unless you're specific, isn't always going to be a healer. But in 5th edition, they are. The druid, great healer. I think the only class that really doesn't get a snippet of healing is some of the... No, actually, no. The fighter can heal itself as well, can't it? By default, the monk can heal itself. I think probably, people are going to argue, I'm going to go warlock and sorcerer. I think probably, and maybe the wizard, haven't got something that's going to give them some additional hit points. But also, when, 0 hit points, there's no negative hit points. Because I was reading that in Castles and Crusades. Again, forgotten negative hit points. If you take more than 10 hit points, so negative, you're dead. In 5th edition, and also when you heal yourself, you heal back up to 0, and then you've got to do another healing spell to go back up beyond that. 5th edition, take 1,000 damage, unless you're going to do the mega damage thing. You're going to be sat at 0. You're going to have some death saves, and if you get a 20, you just get to pop back up. If you get a 1, it's going to do 2 death fails, and it's not even 50-50, is it? Because it's 1 to 9, and then 10 to 20. So you've got more than 50% chance of actually surviving the death save. And if someone does 1 hit point of healing to you, you just pop back up. And then if you take another damage, you go back down again. There's no scar. There's no long-term effect of being constantly 0 hit points, popping back up and popping out down. And I don't like it. I generally don't like it as a games master, and I don't even like it as a player. Now, 9 is wrong tone. This is a me issue. Completely and utterly me. I no longer want to play or run cinematic adventures. I want to play something dark, gritty. So Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing is my favourite game of all time. We're fully aware, if you watch this channel, Shadowrun is chasing behind it like this little kid that, the Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing is like the 80-year-old man hobbling on, and like this Shadowdark's just this little kid that's driving through puberty, that's about to get into its teenage years, and it's probably going to go past it at some stage. That's what I want to play now. I don't want this heroic fantasy setting that's bloated, takes forever. I haven't got enough years in my life going back to the start to carry on and play something I don't enjoy. And finally, my number 10 is, well, let's just lead into one of the beautiful things that 5th edition did in 2014 was advantage and disadvantage. It's probably one of the most game-changing mechanics that's out there. And it was brilliant. It was such a breath of fresh air. It's brought in so many more players to the industry. It's basically helped Wizards of the Coast and especially Hasbro become the monolith company that it now is, alongside obviously Magic the Gathering and Monopoly Go, which I've never played. Advantage and disadvantage is probably one of the best mechanics, especially for getting the players to sort of open up and talk about things they do. But that is where my number 10 is Shadowdark does it better. The way it uses advantage, because in 5th edition, the Games Master will tell you, in Shadowdark, you need to convince the Games Master based on what you're narratively doing to try and gain that advantage. And that is what role-playing's about. Role-playing isn't about, here's your stats and just rolling a dice trying to achieve something. It should be about a relationship that you build with the Games Master. So he or they know kind of what you're thinking. You have a little bit of a meta game, but more importantly, you trust one another. So when they're trying to do something, you can just go, let it go. Let the player argue for advantage and disadvantage. And I use argue in the nicest of terms. And let's say there are other games that do that similarly, but I think that is why Shadowdark is what it is. It's took the best aspect of 5th edition, but it gives the player agency. And player agency is why everyone should, in my opinion, be playing the game. So I'm going to leave it there. Those are my 10 reasons. So next week, I'm going to follow this up with the 10 games the 10 fantasy games. So it's effectively my top 10 fantasy games of games that I will always play over 5th edition. I've got, there's quite a lot on the list, so it's going to be difficult to actually get this down to 10. But this is the challenge and why I enjoy doing these top 10s, because trying to actually get and throwing stuff out can be really, really difficult. And sometimes you get to the one and go, is that really my one? Well, it must be, because it's there. But like everything, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe to the channel. As someone did say on my Discord, if you want to help me or reward me on my birthday for the things I do, please use my affiliate link just today. Go and buy something on ttrpg, and I will much appreciate the fact that it's going to generate a little bit of money for my channel. As ever, thank you for spending time with me. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching.